Even today was meant to be sunny and it's not even sunny anymore.
It's grey. It's grey out here. I feel like it reflects London vibe quite a lot as well. Like the weather has such an impact on how people feel and how people walk and how people talk.
Definitely this year for me more than any other year.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a weird one, man.
For sure, man. But with the British weather stuff out of the way, like, what do you actually want to talk about?
I guess I want to just explain my story. I think as a small artist, like I always ask people like, who's your favorite small artist? And they always go, I have a few people that told me, I can't actually tell you because, yeah, I like their music, but I don't know what they represent, what they want to do, like what their story is, why they make music. And I feel like small artists lack that confidence to just be expressive and tell people what they want to do. And I feel like you have to be confident because you got to represent how confident you are with your music, and that needs to represent across the whole story of what you're trying to do.
Well, I feel like it's confidence, but it's also, you have to be so vulnerable to tell that story.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you're really putting yourself out there to people. And do you want to do that?
I think if you decide, there's two parts of it, right? You make music because as a selfish pursuit, it makes you happy. But then the decision to put it out is one, obviously, you know, some people do it to make money or, you know, have a career in that aspect. But the moment you choose to put it out, it comes with loads of these other things that you have to take care of. And part of that is being vulnerable and telling people your story. And I think people get comfortable as time goes on and as they get bigger through their career and stuff like that. But for me, if people don't see that from day one, I would just feel disingenuous about pursuing a career in this.
Yeah.
And
it's also kind of like, all of my favourite artists are my favourite artists because of who they are. And their music is like the added bonus. I love their music, but I love that person.
Especially today when like, you could have a moment and then your song is the biggest song in the world. But people don't know anything about you. And they only listen to that song. I know so many people that just get lost in a playlist. I feel like nobody was one of that. Like, it's just lost in a playlist for some people where they don't know who Renao is.
So do you feel like having the success of Nobody stole like your chance to tell your story a little bit?
I think so. Because I had everything mapped out as in how I wanted to tell the story. I wanted to start with like holding my breath and like build that story from there. And not that I'm not grateful for it, I'm really, really happy that happened. But I do feel like I lost a chance to set up the foundations of what I want to express. And a lot of it was how I followed Brockhampton and how they were telling their story. And it just felt so organic and like natural.
It's tough because now you're trying to follow such a huge moment. It's like, how can you keep that momentum forever? That's unsustainable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there are some artists that are great marketeers that do it so well when they can keep having that moment over and over again. But I still know some of the biggest viral stars, they're still trying to tell their story because they've just been focusing on building that song to be the biggest song in the world. And for me, it's like belief in the music that eventually it will do its thing. And like for me, it's having, in 10 years time, someone puts on Nobody and goes, "This still a great song," you know? And that's what I want, rather than being like, right now, this is the biggest song in the world. And for me to do that and have a fan base that believes in it so much where they're listening to it 10, 15 years from now, they need to believe in me and not just the song. Things have to be personal to me, and that's what I've started to realise. The music has to be personal to me, and then I'm sure loads of people will connect to it in their own way to it. But that's so important to be honest about it and be like, this is the real story of my life. Because rather than going on all these, you know, platforms and just going and telling them the deepest parts of my life, I'm putting that into my music, which I think means so much more than just going on and posting a video about it.
For sure. So you've had this moment with Nobody, like you can't change that, that's happened, like that's part of your story.
Yeah.
How do you now go from having that moment to sustaining that for 5 years, 10 years? Like, how is that going to look? Like, how do you get to that point and where do you want to get to?
I think I've always planned it out in my head of what I want to achieve in 10 years. And I'd never wanted it to be I never wanted to be an artist in a moment in time. I wanted to transcend that moment. And so I've always thought about what 10 years looks like and then go backward from there. And for me, sticking to that plan is so important. I don't know what's going to happen between year 1 to year 10, but I know where year 1 starts and I know where I want to be in year 10.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important for me. It's not about like success or things, money or whatever. It's more about the story I'm trying to tell now versus 10 years from now. And I hope that people see that, and I kind of want to, let people in on that, like, secret now, where they know what's going to happen in 10 years. So they're not waking up one day and be like, as if he did that, like, that's so random.
Yeah. You're leaving with breadcrumbs.
It's it's adding purpose to everything I do over the next 10 years, I think.
Yeah. And why is that? Like, what makes you want to do that? Is that the artist you grew up listening to did that, or where does that come from, the idea of, like, the longevity of it rather than the hits of it?
I think any kind of great figure has always done that, where people could see where they were going, regardless if it was music or whatever it was. People always knew that in 10 years they're still going to keep doing what they're doing and they love it. And I think that's what inspired me the most. Like, even take Brockhampton, for example, like, obviously they broke up, but I always knew they would have that, they would keep being true to themselves, and eventually being true to themselves is letting go. But you could see that's why people loved them so much, is because from day one you could see what they represented. And Tyler, it's the same. Like, how do you go from a crazy rap album to making like a pop record with Igor? Like, it just...
But it still feels genuine.
But it still feels like him.
Yeah.
And I think he's done that. I think he's my biggest inspiration in that regard. Like, his storytelling is just unmatched, but because he's got a personal vision that he's stuck to throughout, that I think is what made me realize, like, to still be, he's 13, 14 years in this industry, and he's still one of the best people around,
It almost gives you more freedom to do what you want to do, because you're just being human. You're saying, this is who I am, and I can now do all these things.
It's growing up and, like, feeling like I'm still remnants of the person I was, but there's also so new parts of me that I want to explore. And I think audiences are more likely to understand that the more you give them and the more vision you give them beforehand, rather than go like, oh, he fell off, like, he was way better back then.
So that's why you're not waiting to do those things. Like, you want to set up who you are as a person now.
Yeah. Because I think, like, I'm turning 25 now. Like, I think I've come to a conclusion of who I am as a person. And I don't think that's going to change. And I think the biggest thing I can take away from this whole journey is, like, I've stayed true to myself as a person and what I value the most in life. And that's not going to change in 10 years. So I want to tell people what that is.